Welcome to Fireteam Chat, IGN's Destiny show. Thank you so much for joining us. That's a joke about last episode. Joining me today is Travis
McClunky
and Brian.
C-Team.
And this is our last episode of 2020. We're going to be back sometime in January. We have actually a few topics to go over today, even though there was no TWAB. We have the super updates. We're going to talk about Vault of Glass, and we're going to talk about some general stuff, just about the game, the state of the game, and everything going on. So I think the big story that everybody was latching onto this week was the Luke Smith Polygon interview, where he sort of talked about what they're going to do with supers in the future and how he would think about modernizing them. Here's the key quote. He says, "It's much easier for me to look at Nova Bomb and say Nova Bomb is like IP defining," said Smith. "It's an IP defining super. Get rid of Nova Warp." But in this case, Smith is talking about a classic Warlock ability, Nova Bomb, and comparing it to I might have said Nova Warp instead of Nova Bomb at the beginning. My bad. And comparing it to a mediocre PvP only super, Nova Warp. Cutting Nova Warp might hurt some fans, but it's generally pretty safe. More people like Nova Bomb than Nova Warp. For other subclasses, though, the decision wouldn't be as easy. So he also said later on Reddit, there's no plans to look at class homogeny right now. There are many other things to focus on. But What he's talking about is potentially taking away some supers in the game so that they can bring them into sort of what the stasis subclasses have been like. At least that's how I read it, and I think that's how a lot of people read it. It's not happening anytime soon, but how would you feel about that? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what else to say. Basically, the conversation has been, it sounds like someday we might get supers sunset. How would you feel about that, Travis?
Yeah, so I think he kind of hits the nail on the head with what the problem is, right? If you get rid of Nova Warp and make Nova Bomb the super for Void subclass on Warlocks, I don't think you get a lot of argument from that. But when it comes to the Warlock Solar subclass, which I think he uses as an example, the healing pool or the buffing pool versus the Solar Sword super, I mean, the Dawnblade super, that's a hard choice for a lot of players because they have very different purposes and they're also both pretty popular. So I definitely see the problem. I also think that it's probably a false dilemma. Like, there's got to be a way to upgrade the old supers to the new system and just create like an art or an aspect that lets you like switch out what the super actually does and make it work for both. So I feel like there's probably middle ground, but I definitely understand what he's saying. Like, if you want to streamline each of these supers and make them more modular, then it probably does make sense to slim them down. And now each subclass having two supers makes that a little difficult. So I get what he's saying.
He further elaborated in the article about, yeah, you might take away some of the functionality of the supers. And they've done this in the past where they sort of changed up how some of the supers work. Like, I think Warlock Dawnblade got a pretty substantial change recently with the, heat-seeking grenade projectiles. Brian, how do you feel about all this? And Travis, sorry, I'll let you finish first.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, to your point, an example is of the way that bubbles work in the Titan super. Like, when they added in Destiny 2, originally the bubble super was sort of like a side thing, and then they fleshed it out to make it like its own branch, right? So I think they've done that in the past, is my point. But yeah, I think that there's a way to do it without taking away the supers, because I feel like a lot of people would be pretty upset about that.
Brian, how do you feel about all this? Like, do you think they're getting rid of them? Are you concerned by this? And how would you feel if they did it?
Concerned, yes, because I mean, like, you're trading a problem for another, right? It's like the old subclasses don't have as much variety and customization as the stasis subclass. Well, how do we do that? We get rid of Nova Warp. It's like, no, the whole concept of the being able to to adjust and customize the stasis club class is so that you have all these different options and the whole play your way type deal, right? When you take away a subclass, one that we haven't gotten a lot of time with because it was super powerful, then one day they're like, whoa, that's too powerful, cut it down. Nobody plays with it anymore because of that. And it's like, yeah, sure, it's sort of safe to take that one away because nobody's playing with it, but they created that problem themselves, right? It's not that we don't want to play with Nova Warp. It's that you're forcing us not to because it's not effective in the sandbox because you took away what was good about it, and that is usefulness. And so it's, when going back on what Travis said, it's like, yeah, there's got to be a way that they can create an aspect or a fragment that swaps out the super, the functionality of which void super you're using at a given time. It's like that. I don't think that would go over well with anybody, and it kind of concerns me that Luke Smith sort of said it's safe to do that, right? And he just said that very like confidently. It's like it's safe. It's like, no, it's not. We would be mad about that. We would hate that. It's like we want to use Nova Warp. Like, don't do that. And not just Nova Warp, any other subclasses that they might take away as a result of that. But, yeah.
Any other thoughts, Travis?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, like, as a Titan, I feel like it's pretty straightforward. Like, if they wanted to do this and create homogeny, like for Void, it's the bubble. For Titan Smash, it's the single smash, since now we have a roaming super replaced by stasis, right? So we just want the single smash. And then for Solar, it's the throwing hammers versus the melee one. So I think it's more of an issue for the other two subclasses where there's a little bit more balance. But with Titans, it's kind of ubiquitous. Like, I don't think people would be really upset if they did this for Titans specifically. But yeah, I definitely didn't expect Brian to be
you don't think people will be upset? Come on.
In the Titan world,
yeah,
it's kind of straightforward. I feel like everybody knows which ones are better. You know what I mean? But yeah, go ahead, Brian.
No, you go ahead and finish your thought.
I was going to say, I didn't expect to hear you defending Nova Warp is basically what I want to say.
The problem with it is what I said earlier, right? The problem with Nova Warp is a Bungie created problem. They created that problem by making Nova Warp too powerful in the beginning and then nerfing it to beyond usefulness, right? And that's their fault, right? It's not like, hey, we made a super, the community doesn't like it, let's remove it because they're not using it. It's like, no, you make the super good and then we will use it, right? Like, it would be great to have a roaming void super every now and then, but because we used Nova Warp a lot when it first came out and it was good in PvE, broken in PvP, sure, but now we just don't use it because they said, hey, this is too powerful, we're tuning it a little, but then it turns out they tuned it a lot. So it's not so much that I want to defend Nova Warp specifically, it's that I want to make it known that Bungie is saying that this super isn't a problem to take away because no one's using it when they created the problem.
Right.
So I don't think they should take away any of those supers. I think they're in a difficult spot where it's just like they have supers that aren't being used as much. I think if they made Void the iconic one and then allowed you to adjust how it functions within the new system, I think that would make more sense. But the idea of taking away Nova Warp, I think that says that you have a larger challenge development-wise about figuring out how to make all the supers viable in different situations. If people aren't using your supers, that is a design problem on your end. Like, everybody's using stasis in PvP right now, and I'm going to use that as a jumping off point to talk about stasis and how it has impacted the PvP experience. I still stand by that PvP is not nearly as fun because the only super that really seems viable currently is stasis. It is too strong in the PvP battlefield, and that doesn't make for interesting PvP scenarios. It slows down PvP, it stops you dead, and you die. Yeah, it stops you, and you're dead. That is the end of the PvP encounter, and Trials is going on this weekend. Still, it actually made it till we recorded this time.
Oh.
So
It's live, huh?
Yeah, it is live.
Yeah.
It's live, and people are spawning with heavy ammo, apparently. I'm seeing a lot of like goofy tweets out there about interesting things going on with Trials. But yeah, I'm really not incentivized to play PvP right now, especially just because of stasis. It's fun, but I really loved where PvP was at. Yes, it was like a sniper game, but I was having a lot of fun. If this was just an adjustment to how the weapons function and what is like the meta, that would be one story. But this is a drastic change to sniper rifles being usable. They largely are very difficult to use now, more so than they already were. And you've also introduced a whole new subclass that largely destroys the playing field by slowing everything down. How do you guys feel about PvP in the game currently? We're a month past launch. You know, Stasis has had time to settle in. Travis, how are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling pretty good about it, honestly. I've been playing a lot of PvP, and so there's a caveat though, which is that like the reason I feel good about PvP is because I'm using the stasis subclass. I'm not using snipers anymore. I'm using slug shotties, and I'm just sliding around popping people with headshots. Like that's sort of you have to acclimate yourself to that and just play that way to be competitive. And so I'm having fun doing that, but it sure doesn't feel great that like that's the way you have to play to be competitive, and like using the other light subclasses is not really an option. Like every comp match I've jumped into, it's been a full 6 stack, 3 on each side of people in stasis subclasses. And the changes they made to freezing, where now you only freeze for 2 seconds versus 5, I think are really good. I've not been dying nearly as much by just being frozen in place forever. But yeah, it's like it's I'm having fun, but the lack of diversity is real. Like it's real bad. Like there's kind of like a right way to do comp right now, and that never feels good.
And it's stasis. So that's the answer. Use stasis.
The answer, stasis and slug shotty seems to be like, as far as I've seen in like the higher levels of comp that I've been playing, is like that's just everybody just does that, runs around with slug shotties, sliding around and freezing people and popping them with headshots. So,
Brian, have you hopped into PvP much lately?
Yeah, what I wanted to say about that is that I know, or at least it's clear that Bungie has a philosophy that they want the game to feel kind of similar across the board, whether or not you're going in PvE or PvP. But I think Stasis is an incredible example. And to reiterate on things that we've said 1,000 times before, is that Crucible and PvE need to be completely separated, like in terms of how they balance and how they introduce things into the game. Stasis, I'm going to go out and say it. I don't think Stasis should be in PvP. Like I mean, like what Destin's saying is it's not making the game fun. It's not you're not having a good time. And what Travis is saying is like there's a right way to play comp or a right way to play PvP, and that doesn't feel good at all. And honestly, I don't think anybody would be upset except for people who like to cheese things or who aren't generally that great at games. And Stasis is giving them an upper hand because there's a lack of skill involved in needing to use the super to gain an advantage. But yeah, I think Bungie could probably just come out in one day and just admit like, hey, PvE and PvP should be played completely separately, and it's okay if they feel different. That if you take one weapon into PvE from PvP and they feel drastically different, that's fine, because we're playing those things for different reasons and we play them in different ways. So I don't think that we need to have a sandbox where both PvE and PvP feel largely the same.
Yeah, I disagree with that, honestly,
Sure.
Brian. Like the thing is that Destiny has always been a PvE first game. Like I wouldn't be playing PvP Destiny as much as I do if it weren't attached to the PvE Destiny, because for quite frankly, there are much better PvP games you can play where they focus on PvP first, and that you can get really good arena combat playing Halo 5 or whatever. So the fact that I can take my accomplishments in PvE and bring them into Crucible is sort of the main highlight for me, and I think that subclasses are included in that. What I would prefer to see is that like they're tuned, right? Like the way that it works, you shouldn't be able to freeze somebody in stasis or with your stasis powers because they're another guardian. Maybe instead all the effects turn to slowing instead of freezing. Or there's got to be some sort of fix that isn't just like take it away, because the whole reason I grinded and got all my stasis subclasses unlocked in all 3 characters is because I wanted to use them in PvP, and I feel like you're really dissing the PvP community pretty hard if you take their accomplishments out of the game. And that's like when they remove an exotic from PvP because they're like,
so to add to what I'm saying is like, sure, maybe we don't have to remove stasis, but the problem is that time and time again, PVE has, so PVE, like you just said, PVE is, Destiny is a PVE first game, right? And everybody knows that, everybody recognizes that. But time and time again, PVE has taken hits and suffered because of what's going on in PvP. That's what I mean by like we need to separate the sandbox. I'm not saying like, yeah, I did say that we should remove stasis from PvP in its current form. And if they did some massive adjustments that affected how it works in Crucible, then that's fine, so long as that change doesn't affect PVE, because it feels great in PVE, it's fun, and it shouldn't be changed at all. But when the Warlock stasis subclass was nerfed heavily because of a PvP outcry, it affected the way it worked in PvE to a point to where it was like, I don't want to use the subclass anymore. It had a Nova Warp effect on it, where it's just like, this is pointless now because the way that it affects work on PvP, and it's fine to adjust and tune Crucible, because of Crucible, but we've already seen that Bungie can separate things outside of Crucible and PvE, so they can separate them and make adjustments as needed. But for some reason, when it comes to supers and things like that, they just don't. And I think it's clear that they need to actually start doing that.
Well, time will tell. Let's talk a little bit about some of the upcoming raids that are coming to the game, like Vault of Glass. I think that's something that we all look back on fondly. The TLDR version of what they're doing with Vault of Glass is they're saying that if we went in now with our supers that we still have currently, that we would basically raffle stomp the whole thing. So they're making slight mechanical tweaks, and that you should expect old weapons to return. So I have sort of two questions for the panel today. I'm curious, A, are you excited for Vault of Glass's return? And B, do you care that Fatebringer and the old weapons return? And the reason I asked the question about Fatebringer is because we have Nation of Beasts, which is largely, it's Fatebringer, basically, already in the game. So to get Fatebringer back, it just doesn't feel as exciting to me because we have a weapon that has that archetype, and it's pretty good. So how are you feeling about the raid, and how are you feeling about the returning weapons? Travis, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, so I agree. I think if you guys have gone back and played Destiny 1 since Destiny 2 came out, it does feel like a much slower game. Like, that was one of the things they pointed out in the article, was that like the amount of enemies that spawn and the rate at which they spawn is really slow, whereas now you're just killing like dozens of enemies at a time. And so yeah, I think it's really good that they figure out a way to make it a little harder, make it feel the same, keep all the same mechanics that are in the game now, or in the raid now that we remember, but give us more of a challenge and that sort of thing. As for the weapons, I mean, we'll wait and see. I do agree. Like, obviously, they've sort of already tried to recreate some of the weapons that we love, like Fatebringer, but we're also going to get some raid perks now. We know that that's a thing they're doing, where maybe that'll change up at least how it functions inside the raid, if that becomes an end-game activity that we're grinding a lot. So I can see that being interesting. And who knows? They've changed other weapons and how they operated, like Hawkmoon. So I wouldn't be surprised if they, just abandoned what the old Fatebringer was and kind of created some sort of alteration that maybe also could be good in its own right. So,
Brian, how are you feeling about Vault and the weapons returning?
Vault specifically, I have faith that Bungie can make Vault of Glass challenging without making the raid feel too different, right? We obviously have some sort of like roasting of glasses when it comes to Vault of Glass, and probably if I jumped in there, it probably wouldn't feel as good as I remember, just because of all the quality of life changes that we've had since. But one of the reasons why I'm excited for Vault of Glass to return is because we're, when we had Garden of Salvation, we played that raid for a year and that or more, and it got rough after a while. So it's going to be nice that we're going to, have potentially 2 raids at a time, right? Assuming that they don't make Deepstone Crypts pinnacles after the Vault of Glass comes out. But I'm curious about the weapons, because they did say that they're not going to be their original forms. However, so I'm a little skeptical of like giving Fatebringer random rolls and stuff like that, because like, it's Fatebringer, right? It has a certain feel, it has a certain sound, and when you think about Fatebringer, you think about certain perks. You think about Outlaw, you think about explosive rounds, and you think about Firefly, which isn't on any any legendary weapons in the game. Discounting Dragonfly, it's not the same or not as powerful. So I'm interested to see what they do with that. At least I hope that they would keep curated versions of the original weapons, so as a chance to drop. So that way we still have those. I just don't know if Bungie would want to make something like Firefly, exist outside of Ace of Spades, but who knows? But yeah, no. Generally, I'm pretty excited for it. I really want to see what they can do with it to make it feel new, but also feel the same at the same time.
I'm taking notes throughout the whole show. I was just checking out my curated Nation of Beasts. Yeah, it's Outlaw, Dragonfly, Light Mag, and Full Bore. So
doesn't have explosive rounds, and it also doesn't have that oomph of Fatebringer. Fatebringer has a very specific sound and oomph when you shoot it, that I don't think exists in a gun in Destiny right now, unless you count like what are those PvP weapons? Not Forgotten and Luna's Howl.
It's also possible that Nation of Beasts might become one of the sunsetted weapons, so it might be a thing where
it wouldn't be sunsetted by the time that.
No, it's a raid weapon, so they don't have sunset dates currently.
Yeah, so this would be like a way to make sure your Nation of Beasts doesn't go away anytime soon, basically. So.
Yeah, generally speaking, sunsetting's been going on for a while now, and I think a lot of people are sort of coming around to, maybe this wasn't a good idea.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I think initially everyone's like, this is going to be great. It's going to feel refreshed. No, we're just getting the same stuff every season. Like, okay, I need my LMG. I got to get another one. And it's really fatiguing, to be totally blunt about the situation. So I think Vault of Glass coming back is going to be really fun to sort of go back, run through once, and get whatever drops you get. Maybe there'll be a new exotic that they put there, like maybe Travis.
I know you're Mythoclast.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of Vex Mythoclast, but that's like an AR archetype, or I can't remember. I think it was assault rifle. Right?
Fusion rifle.
It was a fusion. It was a fusion rifle that shot.
Fusion that shoots like an assault rifle. Yeah,
I mean that could be amazing if they nerfed it in D1, so it was kind of a joke. But they also sunset it, so I don't.
Fun.
It was fun, yeah. Remember you could bring it in PvP and use it, but like I just have a very sentimental value. I did, Vault of Glass the day it came out, and I got Vex Mythoclast on my first run, so I was like with it in PvP when it was overpowered, and there's like a sentimental part to it. But I also hope it's a good weapon. But
for sure, there's some general stuff I wanted to go over also. Who played the Dawning? Who's played in the last week? Travis.
Me,
did.
I played a lot.
Travis did. Yeah, tell us about the Dawning then and your experience with it. Because to me, I heard it's the same thing we've done for a significant portion of time. And I'm like, nope, I'm good. So what am I missing out on?
It's literally the exact same thing. There's like a short single-player quest line where you bake cookies for different people that are in the Vanguard, or that you interact with, vendors and whatnot, including Zur, who I gave cookies this morning. And then there's also a community quest line that seems more interesting, but unfortunately it requires the community to deliver a lot of cookies, specific types of cookies. So like the only way to really participate is to just bake the same cookies like en masse and deliver them all to the same vendor until you get to the next quest line. And we're on step 3 of 10 right now. So this is probably going to be a real long sprint to delivering cookies until the end of the event, and then I guess there's
3 days out of 10. I mean, we're at three days into the event, and we still have it till January 5th, right?
Yeah, I think there's 5. I think there's 5 phases because there's like an in between step where. Yeah, but anyway, my point is that, and there's also a rumor that I'm not sure if it's data mined or something, but Xenophage might be the reward. I think because they took it out of the exotic pool that you can get from the vendor that's in the tower now. So,
Heir Apparent or Xeno?
I'm not sure.
Heir Apparent's
it's one of those
machine
two.
gun.
I think it was Heir Apparent.
It's Heir Apparent.
Okay, it might be Heir Apparent. Sorry. Okay, so it's Heir Apparent, but sorry, I'm thinking of Xenophage because they gave it a Santa hat. Sorry, lots of weird stuff happened this week.
That sounds correct. Yeah.
Yeah, they gave the bug in Xenophage a Santa hat if you get the Dawning skin for the weapon. So, Yeah, you should look it up. It's great. So my thing is that if they're going to give us an exotic that a lot of the community already has for already doing this, it would be nice if it had like the exotic catalyst. That would be something that I think would actually matter, because I'm not super incentivized to get the same gun again. But we'll also see. I think that's a rumor at this point, so I don't know if that'll end up being true.
So if I hear there's something at the end of the quest line, I'll do the donning. But honestly, I don't need more armor and I don't need more ornaments in the game. So I'm not particularly compelled. I might do like the intro story. Story stuff is usually a good hook for me to hop in and play a game. But yeah, I'm just kind of like, I've done the donning every year. I'm good. It's a lovely event. Like, I love what they do with the tower. The music's sort of fun, but I've done it like 5 times. I'd rather just play more Cyberpunk on PC for right now. Brian,
It's also not a intro quest. The single player quest is like, it's just as milk toast as you can imagine. You talk to Eva and she says, bake cookies for this person. Okay, now do it for this person. And then in between each phase, you have to generate like joy. I forget what the actual material is called, because there's a million materials in Destiny, but you have to basically grind in between each step, and it's not fun. So I've been playing a surprising amount of Gambit.
what are it's called aspects, where it's like go do 900 strikes and then you'll unlock your next aspect or whatever, right? On the subclasses.
Like that, yeah.
So like that's what broke me. I just got to the point where I unlocked like 4 of them and I'm like, I don't care anymore. You want me to like, why is this hidden behind like such an annoying grind, right? And that's happening. And then like the baking the cookies thing, and I'm just like, I got off the treadmill for a little bit and I'm just like, wow, I'm good. I don't need to do that anymore. I have all the exotics I want. I know that the quest for Hawkmoon is going to be there for a long time, and I can do it in like an evening, so I'm not compelled to do that. And the only other exotic that I need is the one in the raid, which honestly, like, it's cool, but it's not game breaking or overly powerful, and that raid's not going anywhere for a significant period of time. So I'm definitely at a point with Destiny and with the dawning stuff where I'm just like, I'm fine taking a break. And that's totally fine if you're the type of player that wants to do that. I think it's a good time to do it. Now, Beyond Light came out on November 10th, and I think they have not offered compelling enough content to keep you going over a month. To be fair, I no-lifed it, and I burned through everything incredibly quickly. So that's on me. But I also think they're in a bit of a difficult spot of keeping community interest going forward. Brian, how are you feeling about the dawning, and how are you feeling about Destiny looking forward in the next few weeks?
I have zero motivation to play the dawning, and I'm not sure like the rewards are enough for me to even really want to. So, I mean, like you were saying, right? It's fine to take a break. Like, you don't, if there's something out in Destiny right now that you don't feel like playing, it's fine to go out and play other games and do other things, right? You don't need to know off the game 100% of the time. You don't suddenly become a non-fan of the game because you're not playing it because the dawning is out. Like, just, go do other things. So that way you don't burn yourself. Because I'm kind of in a point right now where I'm kind of just like burnt out on Destiny. Like, it'll come back around again, just like it always does, right? But I'm in that moment where like the Rathborn hunts, Season of the Hunt stuff isn't really like reeling me in. The dawning isn't reeling me in. So it's like, we'll see how the season progresses. Post dawning into January and before the next season. I think it's supposed to launch in February, so we'll see what happens. But right now I'm kind of just focusing on like getting through Cyberpunk on PC. Like, I'm almost done with it. I'm in the final act, so we'll get through that and then see where I'm at with Destiny once I finish that game.
Yeah, and that's totally healthy. That's a good thing to do. Travis, how are you feeling about Destiny 2 currently and looking forward to 2021? I think we're at the low end of the roller coaster ride, and it'll come back, but right now, if you've done all the content, well, CJ made it, and I think it's a really apt and smart way to think about it. You're riding a roller coaster when you play Destiny, and right now, if you've done all the content, you're at that low point of the roller coaster. They're eventually going to fix the supers and figure out what's going on with the sandbox just generally. But when you get back on that hamster wheel, it's going to be the same thing. Grind to the next power cap. Yeah. And the failure for Beyond Light, in my opinion, is there's no compelling story content throughout the season. I think last season, even though it was repetitive, you had a story beat that you knew you could sign on for every single week, and it was compelling enough to warrant going through the roles. There was a middle point in the mission where you got dialogue from, what's that guy we killed again? can't even remember his name.
So many names, yeah.
Nokris.
Nokris, thank
yeah.
you. That's right.
You got dialogue from Nokris, and then at the end you got dialogue from Eris, and like there was an exotic quest in the middle of it. And I feel like that's the only thing that's lacking. Am I incorrect in that assumption, Travis? You've been doing the Rathborn hunts every week. Is there a dialogue beat there, or is it? Because I didn't get it the first week, so I stopped. Is it every week?
It's not every week. It's like I think they did one on the third week and nothing's happened since. But there has been some story development where like the Crow's getting upset with Spider and stuff like that. But it's nothing major. And I agree that it's not a super. There's also not really like a game reason to do the hunts anymore. Like after you've done the 4 and you've maxed out the level, they didn't really create a long enough of a progress bar. I cannot believe that I'm saying this because I was so happy to be done with it. But like if they really wanted to force people to play it, they would have given people something like last season where you were unlocking the lore entries, right? As far as I know, there's really nothing like that. So like after I leveled up the Rathborn hunts, I don't think I've done them this week. So but yeah, I think the main problem with Destiny right now is that all of the grind, they're pointing you toward the 3 pillars of the game: Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit. And 2 of those 3 have gotten no love and attention. Like Crucible, they didn't add any maps, and I think they removed some, and Stasis is kind of breaking it. And then Gambit, they removed maps and didn't really... They adjusted kind of the way the game works, but it's kind of the same old Gambit. They didn't really give it any love and care. And then Strikes, they were kind of Strikes. Yeah,
I hate doing the Gambit part. Like I just loathe it at this point. Yeah. And Strikes, there's fewer strikes, so largely I get like the same two or 3, even if you're doing your pinnacle for the week, right? And it's just kind of like, I'm good. Like it's just it got too grindy with Beyond Light. I really like what they did with Beyond Light. I like the storytelling they did with Beyond Light, and I finished it. So now it's just largely like, well, I'm good, you know. And it's going to be really one last point for me. Sorry, Travis, but if they've made it so if I miss a week with Rathborn hunts, I'm just screwed. I know, like I'm just not going to do that. Now, one of these days I am going to sign back in and try and catch up and see what happens. But if I'm just permanently behind a week, that means I'll never get the conclusion to the story. And that's just a bad player experience through and through. So, yeah.
I was going to say, like, I think that like, if they're telling us, hey, Destiny is about doing these 3 pillar activities like 90% of the time, and then 10% of the time you're doing seasonal activities or story activities and that sort of stuff, then they need to then fine. Then give us a new strike like every couple months. Give us a new Crucible map or a new Crucible mode regularly. Like I remember those used to come out in off seasons, and now we don't get Crucible maps even for main expansions. Give us new Gambit maps. Give us new Gambit weapons. Like the support for these 3 pillars that they're driving us to is just non-existent on 2 of the 3 of them. Exactly. And then even for the strikes, it's like we're getting 1 new strike every year. It's just not. It's not a good experience, and not something that can keep people's interest for long enough.
Keep in mind that we didn't get a Europa or for Crucible or for Gambit a map, and that's wild to me. Like I mean, we got it for Shadowkeep. I mean, we didn't get like a moon map for Gambit or anything, but the fact that we didn't get a Europa, Crucible, or Gambit map is kind of insane.
Yeah. Also, Bungie, what are you doing with Cosmodrome? You spend all this time and effort, and there's 1 mission there. What are you doing? Anyway, Brian, how are you feeling about Destiny looking forward to 2021?
Optimistic.
Yeah.
Right. Like we'll see what's going on with the next season. Next season, right? We're getting a few new things. We already know what's coming next season. Some of it, right? It's looking like they're gonna fully flesh out the Cosmodrome. With that season, because they're adding Devil's Lair and Fallen Saber Strike into it, so they have to finish and have the full Cosmodrome to have those 2 strikes in it. So we'll see what goes on there, but I'll remain optimistic, as I usually do with Destiny, as I try to be as much as possible, just because even when I'm burned out, I still love the game, right? And I'm always going to love the game no matter where I'm at with it or how we feel about a content drop. So I'll remain positive.
Good. That's a good mindset to be in about the game. And, we're on that low end of the roller coaster. A new story expansion is going to come out. It's going to be interesting. It's going to have new stuff to sort of figure out. And that's why the game's great. I do have one last thing that I want to address to the show, and I'm going to go full screen on me for this. So, hi,
Wow.
I'm Destin. I've been hosting this show for 5 years. Our first episode was January 8th, 2015. As many of you may know, I'm about to have a baby with my wife, right? So I'm going to be a dad. Due dates end of January and potentially throughout the year. I have been working behind the scenes to sort of set up Travis to take over hosting duties while I'm gone, and potentially more often in the future. I really want to focus on being a really, really good dad, and that's going to be my priority going forward. So that might mean I host Fireteam chat less frequently. Now, I'm not saying goodbye forever. I'll probably still be on from time to time, but if I'm not able to keep up with the game because my, dad responsibilities are there, that's fine. And generally speaking, I've been doing the show for 5 years. I really would love to pass the baton to somebody who is, just as excited as I was when I took over the show. And Travis, honestly, you are just that through and through. And I'm really, really happy to see the positive reception to you on the show. I'm still going to be behind the scenes setting up production stuff so that it can happen. And I will still be on the show hosting when I can. But if I find that fatherhood is taking up so much of my time that I'm not able to balance the two, then Travis will be taking main hosting duties. We've also reached out to Paul Tassi of Forbes, who will be joining the panel. And Brian, as far as I know, is still going to be playing until he doesn't want to anymore, I suppose. But yeah, I also want to say really quick, just this community is just absolutely insane. I think I've been afforded so many opportunities and just met so many great people. And thank you to everybody who has watched the show while I've been main producer. And I'll probably still be main producer for a while. I'm in this weird situation where I'm like, yes, I'm feeling pretty significant brand fatigue after doing something for 5 years, right? But I'm also recognizing that this happens every year when we're in a content lull. So, and there's the added not pressure, but responsibility of being a father that I need to, focus on. And this is all just off the top of my head. I obviously didn't script anything out, but I wanted to be really forthcoming with what I've been dealing with behind the scenes and considering behind the scenes for our audience, while also thanking the audience for, supporting me and watching me. Now, I'm still going to be doing stuff on my YouTube channel where if there's a hot Destiny topic, I'll be putting my hot takes up there. You can watch that at youtube.com/the Destin channel. I'll still be on Fireteam chat from time to time, and I'm still going to be doing stuff for IGN. I'm not going anywhere, or I don't have plans to anyway. Yeah. And you guys thought it was important that I addressed that at the top of the show. So if Travis is hosting more often, that's what's going on. I've either become a dad, or I'm working on my performance review pieces for IGN, or, I manage a pretty significantly sized team at IGN, and I have a lot of responsibilities that I feel are important to give proper attention. So thank you for everything. I don't really know what else to say on the topic. Pardon, Travis?
If I could thank you. I was a Fireteam chat listener for many years before I was ever on the show, or before I wrote for IGN. And I love the show. I know it means a lot to people, and it means a lot to me that I was able to get on the show or be involved at all. And so your 5 years of work and love and attention to a game that people, made jokes about, are people still playing that? And I know even on the IGN staff, they were like, what? You have a show dedicated to one video game? What is this about? So I know there were lots of doubters, and you proved them all wrong. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see you around. This isn't goodbye at all, but we're excited for you. Brian and I talk a lot off camera, and we're very excited for you to be a dad. Just like the Mando had to change when he met a small baby Yoda, so too will you need to remove the helmet of not fatherhood when you meet your little green one. I hope that he's not.
Speaking of Mandalorian, we got to talk about that ending real quick.
No. I haven't seen it yet. No.
Spoiler, just spoiled Destin on it.
Yeah, and honestly, when Fran left and CJ left, Brian, I really appreciate you stepping up and saying, yeah, dude, I'll be on the show with you. I know you don't want to host, so I absolutely respect that decision, and I do appreciate your input every week. And yeah, just thank you to everybody, and we'll see what happens in 2021. This is our last episode of 2020, so if you've had a good time with Destiny, or you've had a good time watching the show with us, thank you so much for joining us and hanging out in your living room or listening on your way home. I do enjoy doing this show very much, and I don't want it to go away. So I'm really glad that we have a good support system going forward to keep it going. All right. Well, I think that's everything I wanted to cover off on. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Travis. And until next time, everybody, Guardians out.
Guardians out.